woke America is, frankly, it feels like a waste of resources. It all started with ESG. When ESG first happened, I loved ESG. I still love ESG. ESG is exactly the kind of discovery that makes America great. We found a way to create something that requires no resources, but increases the value so that it increases the economic displacement, right? It costs more money because it brings more value. That's what ESG was, what ESG is. It's what I love about ESG. We're going to reduce our carbon footprint. We're going to plant more trees. We're going to bring more women into executive positions. We're going to, appreciate diversity in culture and race. That's awesome. There are people who are getting paid more money. There is more economic stimulus. There are companies whose stock price is increasing only because they're practicing ESG. That's excellent. That brings more economic power to the United States. Well, then that kind of some bastardized niche of that turns into this idea of woke culture that somehow, everything from the fact that white people are so racist they don't even know they're racist, to this idea that we have to respect the gender identity of the individual and their pronouns and all this other stuff. Like, that's the opposite of ESG. That's a bunch of work that doesn't add value to anything. Mm-hmm. When something is a lot of work and it doesn't add value, it's a drain on resources. So here ESG is this boost economically, and then in comes woke culture, which is this drag economically. Do I think that the Chinese are behind it? I don't think that some freaking Chinese covert influence expert invented the idea of woke. Mm-hmm. Instead, again, following the laws of covert influence, you just find a divisive topic and then you pour fuel onto that divisive topic. So I do think that it's very likely once woke culture was born, then the Chinese started creating their own pots of money to fuel the fight.
So how exactly do you think they're doing that? I mean, I know we know about the bots. We know that there are, what do they call them, bot farms or something, where there's just thousands and thousands of people
social media ads. So social media ads is an easy way to fervent more of that culture. TikTok, as popular as TikTok is, who controls TikTok's algorithm?
China.
Who controls TikTok's algorithm in the United States?
China.
They can actually create different algorithms for different geographical regions, right? So now, if you know that woke culture is active among a certain demographic, and you know that TikTok is the most popular tool in that demographic, you can just shape that TikTok. You can even create algorithms that target specific age groups inside of the algorithm. So mom and dad don't even see that their 18 and 19 and 17-year-old child is getting this kind of content delivered to them, right? So there's lots of ways that a sophisticated technological country can seed and cultivate conflict, like disagreements over culture or woke culture or any other topic that you can imagine, whether President Biden is pro-Chinese or whether his son's laptop was this or whether Trump was put in power by the Russians. You can basically control any information you want to if you control the algorithm that sits on the platform.
What are some other ways they could do it other than social media?
So there's mainstream media. Most of what we find on Google search, most of what you find even in like a newspaper or a magazine is content that is sponsored in some way, right? Somebody wants an article written, somebody lobbies to have an article written, whatever it might be. And that may not be true for your mainstream media like your Washington Post and your Economist and your CNN. They just want clicks. They'll create their own garbage. They just want clicks, right? But when you're talking about magazines that you find on bookshelves, magazines that you find in airplanes, magazines that you find, on coffee tables at wherever around the world, a lot of that content is sponsored. Somebody wants you to write about something, so they pay the magazine to write about something. And through a cutout of a cutout, I mean, the Chinese can just funnel money into certain content that they want to have created. Not just the Chinese. The Russians can do it. The Iranians can do it. The North Koreans can do it. The Colombians can do it if they choose, right? We do it just as well, right? We can direct and drive content creation in all sorts of mediums all across the world. When you talk about things like YouTube, when you talk about things like Instagram, when you talk about any popular tool out there is a potential avenue for a paid sponsor or a paid ad or content that is intentionally created and then optimized to reach a certain audience. It's a difficult, challenging world that we live in because content can be crafted and tailored and targeted so well. It's also an area where we tap into some of the best freedom and the best information that we can get because conversations like this are very real. The only reason this real conversation can happen is because of the same tools that other people use to pervert true information.